Week 4 of the legislative session started with a press conference sponsored by the Florida Coalition for Fair and Comprehensive Tax Reform regarding the Florida legislature's continued refusal to address Florida's real budget problem, lack of revenue. Instead of focusing on draconian cuts to our public schools, healthcare programs, and vital services for the people of our great state. Retirees, students, union members, and others gathered in front of the House of Representatives to call attention to the fact that the policy of cutting taxes for the wealthiest and most powerful corporations while letting Florida's most vulnerable suffer is exactly what caused the current budget collapse.
We're here to talk about the rest of the story. We'll take a look at the billions of dollars in tax revenues that go uncollected every year because legislators have chosen to ask the most vulnerable amongst us to pay for our shortfalls rather than removing tax exemptions, asking corporations to pay their fair share.
We've addressed a budget crisis by lying to the Floridians that pay taxes and saying that there are no alternatives. We've got a budget that is damning to the Floridians that I represent, and frankly, I think that the governor and the leadership in both chambers will pay a very big price for not developing a budget in a responsible way.
On Tuesday, the 29th, thousands of workers from across the state engaged the city of Tallahassee in a giant rally across the street from the Capitol. Workers talked about the budget problems, the attacks on the middle class, and what the Florida legislature should be doing instead to create jobs and stabilize our economy.
We stood with the AFL-CIO, we stood with the workers, we stood with the unions, the teachers. I am a teacher in Escambia County. I'm an 8th grade science teacher, and I'm proud of that. I am not an embarrassment. I am not a liability. I am an asset, just like you are an asset to this state.
The power of the people, the union, the rights of the union, rights of the people as free speech and voice.
On Wednesday, the conversation shifted to the Florida legislature's effort to balance the budget on the backs of our teachers, firefighters, and law enforcement officers by radically changing Florida's retirement system and imposing a 3% income tax on public sector workers. House Bill 1405 was up in the House Appropriations Committee, where over 40 public sector workers and their supporters testified to the negative and dramatic impact this legislation would have on their families. In spite of the fact that there are billions in revenue that could be generated by closing tax loopholes, the bill passed with a 15-8 party line vote.
If we were to institute combined reporting, which stops out-of-state corporations from shifting money out of state to escape their corporate tax liability, we'd save $323 million. If we were to close the loophole that's currently allowing S corporations to escape any tax liability, we would generate $850 million. If we were to reinstate just the tiniest portion of the intangibles tax, that part that only affects 100 families in the state of Florida, we'd generate $289 million. If we just looked at a portion of the 51 separate tax exemptions that the Florida House of Representatives identified 2 years ago, we'd generate $436 million. If we would just look at the free $2 million annual gifts that we give each year to professional sports stadiums, we generate $27 million. Representatives, I just found $1.9 billion for you, and it took me less than 5 minutes.
The Senate Appropriations Committee took up their version of worker income tax bill the very next day. 8 weeks and hundreds of hours of work, including 27 hours of worker testimony, had produced a greatly improved package of changes to the retirement system. Unfortunately, the Senate Appropriations Chairman discarded that bill in a single day and introduced SB 7049 as part of the budget. This new bill forces the same 3% tax increase on all of our public sector workers, but it also eliminates the drop program, eliminates cost of living adjustments for retirees, and closes the defined benefit plan to new workers, destabilizing what is widely accepted as one of the strongest pension systems in the country. After 3 hours of testimony involving over 30 workers from around the state, the measure passed. This new package is the worst we have seen so far, but with heavy opposition from senators from both parties, the fight is far from over.
By raising the 55 minimum, the FRS will surely deny many the benefit of a well-deserved retirement.
Most of the members that I represent are working 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet. I have clerk of court employees who are currently on furloughs for the last 2 years, that their attendance has now increased for not coming to work because they can't afford the gas to get to work. So adding this additional 3% on what they're already not making, I think is a crime.
We should not be balancing the state budget on the back of public employees. This is a tax on our income. We do not get rich while we work, and the changes to our retirement system will guarantee that we will be poor until the day we die.
But I also want to remind you that these public safety officers and people that pay in for these public pensions, when they show up to get their Social Security benefits, unlike everyone else who are going in the private sector who are going to get their full Social Security benefits, generally a public safety officer is going to be cut by 2/3 because of something called the Windfall Elimination Act.
Another difficult week in Tallahassee, but workers across the state are engaged like never before, and with your help, we are still confident that we can beat back many of these attacks. Check back here next week for the next video update. Solidarity.